Welcome to Tuesdays with Tara. I'm Tara Bundance, and today I'm going to talk about belonging. We all want to belong. We all want to feel like we belong somewhere. We all want to feel like people understand us or at least accept us for who we are. So, do you feel like you belong? Like, do you feel like you belong in your family? Do you feel like you belong in your experiences? Do you feel like you belong in your life? Do you feel like you belong in groups of people? And what does that even mean? What does it mean to feel like you belong? Really feel into that for a moment. What does belonging mean to you? The only way we can feel like we belong somewhere is if we feel like we belong in our own bodies, in the experiences that we're having. If it's something that we enjoy, then we tend to feel like we belong without even thinking about it. If it's places where we struggle, then we feel like, oh, this isn't right. And often we even wonder, maybe I just don't belong here. And one of the thoughts that I've been having kind of recurring in my mind is that the only way we can feel like we belong is if we choose to belong. And how do we do that? How do we get to that place of feeling like I belong here? I belong in this life. I belong in this experience. Is it based on how much joy we have? Is it based on how much we grow? Is it based on any one thing? And I'm going to probably venture a guess that it's not just one thing, but where we start is within. So that's kind of what I'm going to talk about today. I'm just going to talk a little bit about what it means to feel like we belong. I'm sure there's not very many people in the world that feel like they belong all the time. And even when we do, we still feel like outsiders. And what that means is we're constantly looking for validation. We're constantly looking for someone to nod their heads and be like, I got you. Or just take us in, without going, you don't make any sense. And so that's going to happen to us all the time. Sometimes we're just not going to make any sense to someone else. Does that mean we don't belong there? Of course not. But often we're seeking a sense of belonging by validation from the outside. And obviously, that's not really going to work in the big picture. In the grand scheme, we only feel like we belong if we're comfortable with who we are. And so we have to find self acceptance, self love, become more self aware and allow ourselves to be present in each and every moment, even when it's uncomfortable or that things are not going right, things are not going well. It's okay because no matter what, we still belong there. And when we don't feel like we truly belong somewhere, then we need to find a way to get ourselves out of that situation. In other words, if I'm constantly unhappy, I can't keep seeking validation outside of myself. I have to find places that fit for me, that work for me. And so I have to take care of myself. What does that look like? It doesn't just look like taking care of your body, taking care of your house. It looks like truly taking care of the depth of your soul. I talked last week about care of the soul. And if we're really looking more deeply at how our souls feel, and if our souls don't feel like it's happy, comfortable, peaceful, where it needs to be, then we need to find somewhere else to be. We need to be doing something else that feeds our soul. And so that might look like taking up a hobby. That might look like getting outside more often. It's not just about meditation and breathing and doing the exercises and the tools that help us through a moment. It means really like feeding our souls from a place of doing things that we truly deeply enjoy. And so if you're in a job that feels like it's constantly a challenge, then either you decide to find a different job or we decide that we need to find more hobbies that feed our souls. If you're in a relationship that is constantly a struggle, always struggling, never really feels like it's going to work out because you're just not really deeply happy in that relationship, whether it's a friendship or a partnership or any kind of ship. We have to find places of joy in all of our relationships. And if we're not finding places of joy, we're probably not on the right track. We're probably not feeding our souls enough. And so that doesn't necessarily mean it's because of the other person. I mean, sometimes it is, but more often than not, it's actually that we're not feeding our own souls. And so, how do we find the places where we can feed our soul? We dig inside and we think about the things that fed us when we were kids. Did you love to read when you were a kid? Did you love to journal when you were a kid? Did you love to be outside? Did you love to play with your friends, climb trees? And so we can look at those simple things and then we can look even deeper. Did we love to draw? Did we love to sing? you know think about the things that really fed your soul when you were younger. And if you don't think of anything, then that's a great place to meditate and start digging deeper into the depths of our minds and finding places that really feed us from the inside. While we're meditating, ask ourselves questions like, what do I love? What do I love to do? If you love to cook, if you love to bake, if you love to drive really fast, if you love to be outside, if you love to dance, if you love to eat, we can find places that feed our souls that don't also, feed our egos. It's not about feeding the ego. The ego might say, oh, you should be blah, blah, blah. But that's not something that's feeding our soul, or that's not a place where we're going to find guidance and inner trust and, drive towards a new thing. If we're deeply listening to our soul might say, remember when you used to fill in the blank? That's what feeds your soul. Do that more often. I took up crafting when my son was about 2, and I didn't know it was something that I was going to be good at. I started doing needle felt, just tap, 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 little needle felt, pushing needle into wool. And at first I just made, little hearts and little acorns. And then I started making really cool stuff. And I made tons of things for my kid. I made tons of things that I ended up selling. And even to this year, my son is 7 years old now. So what, 5 years later, I'm finding that crafting feeds my soul. I even made this. I made this just recently. I started doing new crafts, trying new things. It's something that feeds me. And just 5 years ago, before 5 years, I thought I could do some stuff, but I didn't know that I could be really good at it. And even this year, I posted stuff on my Facebook page and said, hey, I make these crafts, I make these different things, and I've already gotten orders. I wasn't even thinking about it until a week ago. And I was like, you know what? I need to repost that. I haven't posted this in a while. And several people have already said, hey, I want your stuff. I would love to have some of your crafts. So you create things and that feeds your soul. And then eventually you find that it could feed your family, you could get paid for it. But as long as you're doing it from a place that feels like love and feels like joy, then you're finding this sense of where you belong. I really want you to dig for the next couple of weeks and find places that fit you, feed you, help you feel just joyous. And you may forget from the past, or you may not have found it yet. So play around some, write in a journal, but write with an intention to maybe create poetry or to create a song. If you used to sing and you don't sing anymore, start singing again. Go take voice lessons. These things that we love, but we put off for another day because we don't have enough time, or I'm going to do that once this thing happens. That's not care of the soul. That's not finding a sense of belonging. When you start finding this sense of belonging within by doing things that feed you from the inside out, that's when you start feeling like you belong somewhere. If you don't live in the place that you want to be living, if the place where you live doesn't feed you, like on an energetic, emotional, deeply soul level, find someplace else to live And I know people who are moving into a different country because they've realized that this particular location or place in their lives doesn't feed them. I've moved over 50 times because each time I would find a place that I wanted to be, I just felt like, this isn't it. This isn't it. This isn't it. And then eventually I built my geodesic dome that I've been dreaming about building since I was 13. And we live here, and this is where I belong. It doesn't necessarily mean doing exactly what you think you're supposed to do just because of your childhood dream, but sometimes it does. So whether it feeds your soul by finding a place to live, a location, feed your soul to realize this relationship doesn't feed my soul. I'm going to find me again. I'm going to be in the place where I feel like I belong. And then you draw energy into your life that supports you in keeping that sense of belonging. Separation does not feed us. Separating ourselves from happiness, or separating ourselves from another person, or separating ourselves from, things that we don't like to do, that doesn't bring us happiness. What brings us happiness is separating from things that don't feed our soul and then diving headfirst into the place where our soul is fed. So what I'm wanting you to think about this week is really find the places that feed your soul. Find the places where you feel like this is where I belong. Not just pipe dreams, not just futuring, not just I'll do this when and if and as soon as I have the right money, I have the right house, I have the right partner. Feed your soul today. What does it mean to feed your soul just a little bit? To find that sense of belonging within. This is the thing that I want you to try to do for yourself, because you're the only person that can do it. You can't look for that from outside. One place that I didn't feel like I belonged was when I would find myself in situations or friendships or relationships that I was constantly doing more things than the other person was doing. And then come to find out I'm codependent. So what did I do? I started going to coda groups. I started going to therapy. I started digging more deeply to find the places that don't feed me and unpiling and unpacking the things that I was trying to find in others. And then I started doing that for myself. I started seeking that within because I've done so much work on myself that I feel like I belong in my life and I deserve to be happy. And if I'm feeling unhappy and I'm feeling like things aren't working out, I got to find out where I'm being codependent. That's one of the things that I work on. Basically, we don't fit unless we feel like we fit in here. And one of the things that you can do to feed your soul is start believing in yourself. It starts with self-love, but it also starts with digging a little more deeply and trusting that you're not messed up. There's nothing wrong with you. And if there is, do something about it. If there is, find a therapist, find a place where you can get the support you need to feed into trusting and believing in yourself. Once we start believing in ourselves, that's when we start feeling like we belong in this world, that we belong in our lives, that we belong in the experiences that we're having. And when we don't, we say, this isn't working for me. I need to move to the next thing. I need to move into a place that supports me and helps me feel like, yes, this is where I belong again. Because again, you can't seek it out there. You can only seek it in here. And if you don't feel like you belong somewhere, it's not always about location. It's not always about relationships. It's not always about our job. It's not always about the things that are going on in our lives around us, but sometimes it is. So we have to trust and believe in ourselves to dig deep enough and go, yeah, this really isn't working for me. Or I need to change some of my habits so that I can start seeing that I belong here. It's a balance. It's all about how we can find that within ourselves. So I'm just going to put that out there to you this week. Really find places where you belong. Find the places where you feel like you don't belong, and start feeding your body, feeding your mind, feeding your soul, and doing the things that you love, trying new things that make you feel happy. And share with me how you feel about that. Share the things that you discovered down below and in the comments, and enjoy this life, enjoy your world, enjoy who you are and how you are in the world. You deserve that. We all do. Trust this process, trust yourself, love yourself, believe in yourself, create belonging. Be blessed. I love you. Have a blessed week, and I'll see you next week on Tuesdays with Tara.